Imagine being asked to prove the value of something before you've even been allowed to do it. That's the challenge CX leaders face every day, especially in industries like aviation, where every decision is high stakes and long term. But what if the real evidence is already hidden inside your business, waiting to be connected, clarified, and acted upon? So, in today's episode, we explore how to make the business case for customer experience. Not with fluffy promises, but with operational insight, data-backed impact, and a fresh look at how airport experiences are evolving. So, if you've ever struggled to turn customer ambition into commercial action, this is the one for you. I'm Oliver King, a managing partner at Engine, and this is CXD, where we explore the art and science of reimagining customer experiences. Today, I'm joined by Claire Donnellan, a powerhouse in the aviation industry with over 30 years of experience shaping customer experience strategy and operational transformation across airports and airlines. Claire brings an incredibly rare combination of commercial acumen, human-centered design, and deep operational expertise, with a track record that spans major international gateways and regional hubs alike. From her work with Sydney Airport and Virgin Australia to her current advisory roles with Airports Council International and the Australian Airports Association, Claire is a trusted voice in steering strategic direction, capital planning, and inclusive experience design. Claire, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, Ollie. Yeah, I'm like, wow, who is this person? She must have started working when she was one.
Oh, I was going to say. Oh, you are really impressive. You really impressive CVs. But how did you end up becoming such an aviationist? I mean, this incredible career you've had. What stuck you to it? How did that all happen?
I actually joined the aviation industry during a pilot strike. So you actually understood the impact if airlines shut down. So you always had in the back of your mind. Yeah, I just came back. I lived in the UK actually for a few years. And while I was there, Richard Branson announced Virgin Blue. So,
okay.
Yeah, I wanted to come home and work for Virgin Blue, and I did in their head office and got to set up all their new around the region. It was fantastic. It was probably one of my favourites. And then wanted to learn more, and the way to learn more is to work what they call on the dark side. So I went and worked airport side. So good combination for then consulting and advising.
So a lot of on-the-ground experience, seeing how it all comes together, airlines and airports. Let's kind of get into some of the detail now of what we want to talk about. And I'm interested to try and, frame, if you will, the sort of the disconnect that we're kind of dealing with. So it seems that it's a paradox that we see in loads of organizations. Leaders kind of say they want the proof of impact before actually investing in customer experience. But often, unbeknown to them, the evidence, it seems, could already be there in some way. It's not that so much the data doesn't exist, it's that no one's really sort of connecting the dots between it. And customer experience teams may be rich in insights, but those insights often kind of sit in isolation. They're not linked to commercial outcomes or operational costs. So, Claire, I wonder, from a CEO's perspective, I wanted to understand, what's the cost of doing nothing? Where they might be asking themselves, where are we losing revenue? Where are we eroding trust? Or where are we sort of burning through customer goodwill? Now, Claire, you've worked in organizations that already have the data they need to make smart customer experience decisions, but they still seem to hesitate to act. Why do you think that sort of disconnect exists?
I think it's like anything. It depends. If anyone's worked with a IT department and you're listening, I think that's the number one thing that they hate hearing, and it's multifaceted. So, a customer experience, plan is to get off the ground, or even a strategy. It's a company-wide thing. To link it to one thing isn't easy to do and show output immediately. So if you think of customer experience as a lever across revenue, operations, reputation, and it's all got an underlying risk attached to it, it's across all those areas. It's not just across one. So you can build the most beautiful food court, and anyone that's worked with me will know what I'm going to say next. If your bathroom behind it's filthy, do you think they're going to buy food, or even if they do, sit there and think they want to buy more? Like a retail team will look at people spending money. I mean, there's a high conversion rate on food and beverage at airports in particular. And it's compounded if you can increase the lifetime value of that customer. So airports are different in they might have a lifetime value of a customer, but not in a clear in the same way as, say, a product that's, bought and sold and exchanged, but it can be measured during their visit. Could be that they buy one thing and think, oh, I'll get a bottle of water or I'll get something else. They're not going to even be looking if the other things around it have annoyed them while they're there or even before they've gotten there. When people are planning and preparing, if the information on the website is inaccurate or where they're looking and they're frustrated before they even start, like they've looked for, it might be a certain thing your airport has, like a food or a beverage thing or a specialty store, and it says it's open and it's not, you might just go,
Yeah.
let's go through the gate. And that's the poor commercial team's done this massive thing and just one little thing's let them down.
Yeah.
So
do you think, so it sounds like this idea of like you have to join the dots between things, and that part of the challenge is that sometimes customer experience initiatives are framed within one sort of vertical within an organization. It's just going to be about ambient. It's not talking about what it means from an operational perspective or something, and that what you need to do is make much more of a joined up case across various things.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's just say you want to look at the brand mix, like could be the specialty retail and your food and beverage, how that looks. You're trying to bring in new experiences because obviously generations are changing, I'm sure. Like that impacts how you're doing your tenders moving forward because obviously there's a generational shift and what they're interested in is emerging things. It's also sometimes retro things, which obviously reminds you how old you are. And you've got this great plan, you're doing the research, it might be different in how you do research on sentiment. So you're looking at business development research. So the places you're looking for the information is very different to the places you're looking around how people feel about things and that emotional connection. And so you do a massive rebrand, you put in all the right brands for the mix that's there, but the piece that's missing is all the activities happening at that experience around it. And again, people that work in this space that are listening know these things that happens from home. When people are planning, they're choosing what airline, they're choosing what airport, they're choosing their transport, they're loving all of the tools even outside of the airline systems that pull it all together for them, the whole trip. I mean, how many people now are booking their trips through AI tools? Give the AI tool, I've got this budget, this is what I want to do, book it for me. And if all of that's not available in the right form, the person firstly is not booking it or looking for it. Secondly, then they turn up to the airport and it starts out on the roads coming in. Like, how are you looking at your adjacent industries with that? And then the person gets there, what's the check-in experience like? Then what's the security screening like? It's all of those things before they might even see something commercially orientated. So it's probably the number one piece of feedback I give to airports in these environments is, how are you looking, if you do want to put a lot of investment into a commercial area, looking at all of the other teams and the influences there and how much of a priority it is to them? So if they've got a cleaning contract, which means they're cleaning a very highly used bathroom once every 6 hours right next to a brand new food court, the commercial team's business case should be questioned, and they may even tip into investing into adjacent parts of the terminal, which might not be in their remit normally, but because they want their commercial area to succeed.
It's blurring the boundaries, isn't it? And when we think about the entire experience, about how that journey is now structured, whereas in the past, it would be very, very clear the steps between things. That's all becoming blurring. Where you're checking in is changing. Used to be at the airport, it's now before. How you're getting there, the information stream. So all those things are becoming blurred. And so it seems like when you're thinking about an experience initiative, you also have to sort of blur the boundaries of that and understand if you want to do something in one place, you probably need to pay attention to other elements, as you say, at the boundaries of that opportunity. But with this sort of digitization of the experience and the operation and all the opportunities that affords, we're collecting vast amounts of data now. So do you think that the data is evolving and is helping businesses to make better customer experience investment decisions?
I definitely, that's a given. I'm certainly finding it's capturing the right information and in the right form, in the right format, going to the right forums. That's a lot of Fs, isn't it? Could we put that into like the 4Fs or something, Ollie? We could brand that up and steal it. So, like you said, the information's there, but it's just, and they might be capturing all of the information, but it's not going anywhere, or it's being exposed at the wrong forums, or the forums don't have the right people there, or it's not linked to decision making. So, or people think they need certain information and they'll go and get it. So, say, for example, if I'm working with an airport that might be, I don't know, a medium-sized airport, they'll think I probably should be doing regular ongoing research with passengers or travelers or guests, customers, what everyone calls it, something different. Maybe they don't. Like, have you got a capital plan coming up? Will you be investing? Why are you asking? Like, what do you need that? Are you hassling people for information if you're not going to do anything with it? And then are you going to hassle them weekly? Is that what you're telling me? Like, what's the plan when you're doing that? Or are you baselining something? You're going to leave people alone and come back after you invest, and you're going to talk about that. What's the purpose of it? And what have you already got? So, yeah.
Because it's what you do with it. So yeah, some people think that we just we're all over the experience because we're capturing data, but you've got to do something with that data. You've got to look at it and understand what's going on and figure out what your steps are. And I think it feels like there can be like a growing sort of disconnect with some traditional metrics. I don't know, like NPS, customer satisfaction, ASQ scores, and they're not without value, right? But because they don't often have much sort of diagnostic power. They capture sentiment but not behavior, and they can be a bit easy to game, can't they, at times? But they don't always link clearly to those commercial outcomes. So for CX leaders trying to build a business case, that's a problem. What kind of evidence gives leaders more confidence to proceed with something? What do they need?
So I think, again, it depends. Do you like the depends word? It comes up. And again,
Right.
multifaceted. It's every time. So you say, for example, an airport might be doing an expansion, and initially, I think the challenge for a customer experience professional is to actually be in the room when the scope's being written and be able to give informed information on that if they're not there right at the beginning. And I think we also know, do they talk to the people that it's intended for? And I don't just mean accessible travel. Obviously, with accessible travel, we do talk about talking to the right people to co-create things. It's the community, it's the airlines who are bringing in different customers, because even before you design a space, you have to know the airlines you're targeting and who's coming in, because if all of your airlines are low-cost carriers, even someone's behavior might be different when they're traveling a low-cost carrier than when they're at an airport where they're flying on a full legacy carrier. So it's even before people get to the designing stage, co-creating it like we talked about, but getting the confidence is then going, right, well, who are we designing for? What do they want, need? How do we know that? How are we going to measure that? And then there is always that point where there is a leap of faith in what the data is saying. But ultimately, every airport is different in how they pull all those pieces together. So to our point before, an airport could do a really good food court. You say that was amazing, but they might not have told you they also made sure the wayfinding was great. They had assistive technologies in place. They had to deal with the local hospital because there was a lot of people going there to get hair transplants. Seems to be a thing in Europe, but that's obviously a market for that area, So I thought, well, they've obviously got some sort of deal going on to bring people in. So you don't hear that secondary bit, is what I mean. You just hear the flashy headline bit, and if you contact that airport, they'll say, oh yeah, we did a brand new brand mix, and we just lift the ceiling, and that was it. But they don't tell you all the other bits. Or your airport might need all the other bits, and theirs didn't. So to answer your question, it's start. And if you're scared, you're going to have to start small, and it's going to take a while.
One of the things you mentioned to me when we spoke a while back, which really caught my attention, was this idea that sometimes the evidence for a customer experience initiative, that the evidence of its success, kind of already exists, but historically in the data that the organization has. And I thought that was incredible to hear. Could you just expand a bit
Yeah. So let's just say the airport might have declining commercial returns, and they'll think it's because of an aging set of retail assets. It can also be the other things around it compounding that. So then they might look at it and go, oh, okay, so we've changed the retail mix, but it's still like it's leveled out. It's not getting better. It's not getting worse. And you'll say, but look at the data you've already got on things like, so if they are doing, say, research is one example, look at the information you've got on wayfinding for that area, what's happened. And you go and have a look, and that actual commercial thing might have made wayfinding worse because of the example you and I just talked about before. So that retail thing's looked at all of the wayfinding in that area to get everyone to that food court, but hasn't looked all the way out, still got old signage to the old food court or old maps, or like the project hasn't looked at where people are coming from, or sometimes not the digital assets, which we were talking about before. So you're looking into the data previously to say, right, well, say, for example, wayfinding might have been not amazing, but then it's actually gotten worse since the new food court opened. Why is that? And you've got it historically showing you, oh, look at that. It was right when we put the food court in. People got lost. And then you might go, I'm going to go out and talk to our ambassadors, or I'm going to ask our guest contact center if you have one. I'm going to look at our social media, see if there's anything around that point. And you'll be like, wow, by joining all of those dots, it was quiet across all of the channels. But once you put all the channels together, and then you might start talking to your stakeholders and go, have you had people asking you where the food court is because they've gone to the old site for that, or
Sounds like it's sort of the cause and effect. So you see something declining, you got to step back and kind of go, okay, hang on a minute, what else is going on here that could have caused that decline? It seems like when you're trying to pitch experience projects, people want to say, well, what difference is it going to make? Show me the value of this. But actually, historically, they would have had experience initiatives that they did. They might have realized they were doing something to specifically improve experience, but it did improve experience. And you can kind of go look back and say, well, look, that's instead of looking outside your organization, you can look inside your organization and see the ways that you unexpectedly increased experience and what that was all about.
Yeah, so there's probably a few things there. People immediately go, because we're not doing research, we don't know, or we stop doing our research and there's too big of a gap. So that can be part of it. And it's saying, but there's social media that's been sitting there quietly. Have you been looking at that? Like if I don't know, you might be talking about your car park. It's like, I am sure people have been talking about that. How well is that tracked? Are you reporting on that? You can go back and look at that and say, look at all those inquiries you used to get. You upgraded your website, which is a commercial investment. The inquiries reduced on your social media. Like it happens, it's there, or in your emails. Like if you're not recording your phone calls and tracking those, certainly most airports would be tracking their social media in one way, shape or form, and could go back and have a look. Emails the same. And then all of a sudden the inquiries are going up again because they're not keeping the website up to date. Okay, well, it's worth the investment of sometimes a few $1 million, because look at the amount of inquiries that have gone down. It means people are using our car park, not ones adjacent to the airport, because they're telling us they're not booking because they can't amend their bookings online anymore because we've done a system upgrade, which means people that are using Visa card for some reason, it's glitchy and it's been going on for months, and it needs a complete change because the patches that we're doing just aren't working anymore. So it could be those kind of things. Or I think maybe the example we might have talked about before, and it's one I actually spoke about today with an airport I'm working with at the moment, was bathrooms again. Sorry, I'm a bathroom obsessed person. Because it's an easy one because everybody can relate to it, right? So they were saying, oh, we might need to put some of those smiley sad things into the bathrooms. And the bathrooms there's not enough bathrooms for the people. Like the airport's grown exponentially. And they already know that they need more bathrooms and the cleaner can't get in there to clean it. And I said, but it's always going to be red at the moment. Like, what do you need that information for? It'd be good to baseline it, but would it be better to have, say, a people counter on there? So let's just say you're an airport that's always had people counters, but more for the staff when to go to the restroom. So once there's been, I don't know, 50 people go through a bathroom, it flags the cleaner to go there. So it might not have actually been meant for anything to do with customer sentiment or experience, but it can use that. I said, I know that in the past when we had no data, it'd be right, well, what do we consider is a reasonable per pan usage for a bathroom? So we can determine capacity, but that's a retrospective thing then. You look at it and go, oh, so 5 years ago, per pan usage was this, and now it's, wow, it's this. And if we're going to bring in more airlines, it's then going to be like, all of a sudden we've got people, and then you can start calculating. Commercial thinks that every minute lost is this many dollars, and I can prove there's this many people in a queue waiting for a bathroom, and it's also dirty. Then we can start working out currently right now what's the impact on commercial revenue. You could actually even look at the commercial revenue retrospectively as well to say, well, before, well, it was this many uses, it was this, and we can work it out and do forecasting based on that.
And just to go back on something that you spoke of sort of earlier on, we're talking about this idea of sort of social proofing decisions versus strategic risks, and the frustration that there is that you almost need to prove the impact of something before you're allowed to invest in it. But you mentioned that there's this idea of starting small on things to kind of begin to kind of prove the case. And there feels, doesn't there, that there is this shift happening where more organizations are experimenting with things, and they're creating kind of this idea of minimum viable experiences. So small scale, low risk pilots designed to kind of show traction. And it's less about being, right straight away, and more about learning fast, reducing fear, and building confidence. So how, thinking down those lines, how can you go about breaking this cycle of hesitation where leaders want sort of evidence before acting, when actually that evidence only emerges after action has taken place? What are the tips and techniques you've seen that work to kind of do that?
I'm laughing because you look at what motivates the people that can unlock the purse strings. Like
Okay.
how people probably do it at home. You work out, right, what does my partner, what motivates them? But it's going, well, what's their mandate? Like, what's the board's mandate at that time, and aligning to that? Or I find customer experience professionals get hooked up into the emotional connection, which is obviously the brand and the experience side of things. But when you're dealing with boards, or you're dealing with putting business cases together to even get it into a project pipeline, it's not selling in emotion, it's selling in risk. Why, as a business, should you do this? And then knowing what's motivating the people in those positions, it's just going, well, maybe at that time the company's bleeding money. It's not the time to be putting forward massive risky things, but it might be, okay, if we're worried about our reputation right now, here's some low-hanging fruit things. Let me track it, and let me do it, and I do it. But on top of that, there might be one other really clear thing. And if you don't have the research, like I said before, maybe it's case studies of other airports. And showing what they've seen. Like I said, digging into the social media. It might be going and looking at what other industries have done. The accessible travel space I talked about before. Obviously, you and I have mutual friends that are really focused in that space. Adjacent industries have really good ways of showing how that can work and what's there. But I find selling the risk, and when I work with companies, obviously you're wanting to measure things, like I usually do some form of scorecard, and always you make sure it speaks to what the broader company is working towards and the board. And if it's not a focus for them at that time customer, it's finding what is. And if it isn't, and you're needing to sell it and create it as a space that you do need them interested in, it's talking about risk and often lost opportunities with commercial. It's not necessarily creating revenue. It's looking at what more revenue could be driven from what's already in play. And the other part of it would be reputationally, I suppose is the best way to put it, reputational risk. So if your company has really started to advocate that they're the most accessible airport, well, then you've just got to prioritize some things in that space, because the last thing you want is that you've gone out and said that, and it has happened to airports where they've ended up on the front page of the paper because the commissioner's gone through and had a bad experience because you said you've trained everyone in something, but you've trained your own staff and not the stakeholder staff, that kind of thing.
And that's I mean, it happens in aviation, doesn't it? But you often see that though in other industries where there are big sort of above the line advertising campaigns claiming to be X or Y, and you kind of go, well, that sounds brilliant, I'll go and do that, and it turns out to be anything but. And so they've almost shot themselves in the foot reputationally. But I love that thought about so stepping back, not focused on, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful, but actually about talking about risk, talking about lost opportunity. It feels like you need to sort of tune in and almost like swim with the tide of the conversation in the organization at that time, and find a way to position that customer experience initiative in terms that they're listening to at the time, right?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, people will say, well, why would we need to do that? Well, people don't know what they don't know. So if your board's not reading the social media posts and they're not aware of it and it's being addressed on a regular basis, but it could actually be prevented in the first place, well, you position it in that way to say, well, look, we're addressing it, but we're like hamsters on a wheel. It's a lot of resources to sort this thing out, and this is the operational expenditure to keep it going. We get that in the next year we don't want to do anything because we've got a refurbishment or an expansion. But when we do, we have to add this to the scope. And if it's not cost recoverable through, and I talk cost recovery because in Australia a lot of the airports are privately owned. Obviously in other countries it's different. The focus isn't the same. You might be wanting to, I don't know, have your project at the airport be put ahead of a ports project, because I know a lot of the airports in the US have that competition internally for their budgets. How do I put what we're doing here ahead of that? And it's a risk-based thing. So then, yeah, it's saying, well, as a board, you weren't aware of it. This is what's happening. Quite happy to keep doing what we're doing, but it's getting to a point where I think it's costing the business money when it doesn't need to. It might need an investment that's going to hurt for 3 years, but I can show on year 4 it's going to be worth it. And not only that, we've set a precedent for all the other business cases. And like I said, you start small on something like that. You show in a small risk that it's worth it. Then you just make it, the company's bigger and bigger. And then as a customer experience person, all of a sudden it's in the design guidelines. You don't have to be in any project meeting on that anymore, only for something that's by exception, which means all of a sudden your time's freed up because it's almost like change management. Like, you know how the first step is, I can't remember, in that Cotter's change, it's like basically let people know they've got a headache and they need to do something about it. It's like awareness of the need, I suppose, and then the motivation for it.
Platform.
Yeah, that. So
yeah, making that commercial case and to understand what the drivers of that are, so how you could increase spend. You can, in a food court, cleanliness and, availability of product and differing food options, all those things will impact what people spend. And, you can make the case between that. So thinking of those customer experience leaders who are trying to turn their vision into some form of investment. We know they often face skepticism, inertia. They know kind of what needs to happen and they can see where the pain points are, but they're still not getting support or funding or the belief to do this. If there are customer experience leaders out there listening who are struggling to make this case internally, what's the sort of the first thing you would recommend they do? How do they go about this?
it is back to looking at how you're selling that risk. So what information do you have? Where is it going? Is it aligned to what the business is driven on? And what forums is that going to? So often if I go into businesses and that's happening, they either don't have some sort of forum, they've got too many, or they've got the wrong people on it, because maybe it was the senior leaders at some point, they've gotten sick of it and they've started to send delegates. So it never has the right people in the meetings, so people get bored with it. So to me, it's all around that governance. And it is also, I think, people think the customer experience person is the person that gets to do those things and that's their problem, rather than the customer experience person is the one bringing the voice to the table, but it's determined by who the accountable owner is on how that works, and then helping the accountable owner drive what that need is.
So you often see that there's almost like a misunderstanding of the role of the customer experience team. Like they're there to fix it as opposed to advocate what needs to be fixed and assist those other teams in fixing it.
Yes, 100%. So that other team, and what I found, once you start doing that and people understand it, and one of the gentlemen I used to work with used to say it was hocus pocus, customer experience. People didn't understand it. So once I think in their remit that understand how their role drives it and it's not scary anymore. So that it's like if the North Star for that airport is let's talk about the obvious one. People go, we want to be world class and be the most seamless airport in the world, right? Like everyone has that. Google it, every airport has that somewhere. And it's how does someone in the parking team know what that means for them? How does someone at check-in know what that translates to for them? It's helping the teams that manage that, looking at, right, well, how does that look for us? So for an operations team, it might be, we just need to make sure people get from A to B. So if something's blocked, we know we need to unblock it, but we also need to escalate it after a certain period of time. Like it's having a knowing, right, well, we know what our job is, but we also know this has got a broader impact. Like how are you, all working together, in a bit of an ecosystem on what that looks like, and just worrying about your piece, but also knowing that influences something larger and how that line is drawn. So then it's working out, well, what's the scorecard for the business? And it's not owned by a person, it's owned by multiple people. You might have spoken to the chief beforehand to say, I'm going to hand over to the chief of commercial who actually wants to talk about this piece of the scorecard. And it shows then that everyone knows that they're part of the, piece that's driving back to, could be a corporate strategy, could have some type of, goal in it that we want to be, if they do have a sentiment score, it might be we want 85% of people satisfied, or it could be a bunch of things that your airport chooses to track at that time.
Yeah, and the image that's coming to mind when you're talking about these people is it feels that they're more sort of like facilitators, coaches, choreographers of customer experience within an organization. The skill they have to frame the experience conversation they're having in terms that their different audiences can understand, the way that they are, bringing the right people into the right conversation at the right time, helping those people sort of want to own aspects of experience that they can control within their role. And this real skill to tune in to what the conversation is within the business, the pressures that it faces, and finding ways to articulate the experience opportunities within that. So it seems like it's it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and probably an area that I've always found interesting is if somewhere isn't tracking things yet and they think, oh, we don't have time for that now, we'll start tracking in a year's time when we're ready. I said, why don't you start tracking now? Even if you're just not listening to it yet, you've got the data to look back on when you are ready. Or if they do have ambassadors or people taking phone calls, it doesn't need to be a fancy software thing. It could be a tally sheet. I've even seen that. So you can say, oh, but we don't want to know because we're not going to deal with it. It's already happening. People are already coming and asking your ambassadors 100 times a day where the train is. So why don't we just find out if it really is 100 times, because some ambassadors will tell you it's 100 times, but you find out it's once a day. And then it's actually not that big a deal. Like, at least so don't be scared to find out. At least know what you're dealing with, and then look at it all and just work with what you can. If the company's not focused on it yet, back to the sell risk, not emotion. Well, what do you think is the most important thing with what's a priority to the business right now to put forward?
That's brilliant. So I'm thinking now about some more general advice we might be able to give. Is there like a super important quality that you think a customer experience leader should have when it comes to sort of driving change within a skeptical business?
Yeah, I do. You see different types of customer experience people when you go around the place. There's often commercially focused ones or operationally focused ones or service focused ones. But depending on the size of your remit or what you've been tasked to do as an airport, it can be you need a particular version of those, or someone that's quite tactical because it might form part of your operations team. But I do think if it's someone that needs to be driving strategic change, it's someone that's, people are going to laugh when I say this, someone that's not attached emotionally to something. Like, it's that person that can give a practical answer, like can take a complaint for, the required period of time, resolve it and not be rattled by it because they understand the person is a human. They're trying to get an answer. You're talking, as a human to another human, and it's just sorted. And I think this is another thing, when you don't get into it and attached to everything, and you can look at things from what the executive and the board needs, because they have a mandate, even if you don't necessarily like it sometimes. And maybe if you don't like it ever, you need to look for another business to work for. And then it's looking at the people that are going to help the company achieve that. So how do you unlock their ability to do that? And if there's a block in capability of what's coming up, or there's a block in resource allocation, or a block in how things are decided, so the forums aren't right, the information's not right, attitudes aren't right, it's actually helping the business understand why they're not getting what they need. And it might not be anyone's fault. It's they're a product of their environment. So if they're wanting to bring in a whole heap of automated vehicles, well, do people have the capability internally to do that? Have they been brought on the journey? Or if they're bringing in a bunch of new measurement tools, do the people there feel comfortable with that? Doesn't mean you need to get new people. It just might mean you need to structure things differently.
It seems that when you were describing that, the image I had in my mind was almost like a cinematic one. But this idea, this person has to be able to sort of like pull focus, like step back from the thing and see the broader picture, see what's going on, see what those causes could be of this particular situation. So there's that objectivity, have that real open-mindedness and kind of curiosity around, you know, what the solution might be, and then, as we've talked of before, be able to kind of frame that in the right way to the people that are going to need to be involved to fix it, and get behind them to fix it. So, you know, they are part of the solution, which is the classic kind of, you know, it's the co-creation of those solutions. It's doing it with them, not to them, seems to be absolutely key.
I think we've all been in those discussions where they want to value engineer things out. And sometimes, you know, you'll be wheeled in to sort of say, hey, you know, how you wanted to put in something, it could be accessibility type of initiative, and it's not required from a regulatory point of view. And some people get really emotionally upset about that, which it can be upsetting if things, you know, there's been a lot of work go into it and you know it's great for the community, gets people out of their homes that wouldn't normally fly, and it's going to get cut, and you know you're the salesperson for that. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But it's also thinking objectively and saying, help me understand why we're value engineering that particular thing out. Is there something else we could look at, or could we scale it back, or could we change it in a way? And then when they ask why, that you can explain it in the terms that they're motivated by. So it could be, you know, we're in an area that has an aging population. We're just about to sponsor this thing at a school, or we're working with the city on this. Like, it aligns with something separate to the commercial arm, and it's been the commercial arm that's made the decision. And they're like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. Oh, well, let's work together on how that could work. Maybe we bring in a sponsor, or maybe we do it in phase 2 and we hold the space, but, you know, in the short term, it might be something else. Or you can always negotiate. You don't always get the outcome you're after, but at least you've been an educated and informed advocate for the next time. So then the next time that, you know, the business case might be, you know, a bit stronger. When I say business case, it's not always money. It's the reputational risk attached to that, or it could be a standard that you've decided as a group. So I think from the outset, like you and I said before, it's what do we stand for? Not just saying it, how does it then sit in our corporate strategy? How does it then sit in as a value driver of the business? And if it's not an overt value driver for the business, it doesn't always need to be, but it needs to be an enabler for the ones that are there. So then how are you unlocking that, you know, value engineering something out? Which one of those levers is it impacting and how?
Yeah.
And then how do I pull that together and sell it? And if it's not already in there, it's not already part of the reporting process or the way people are thinking internally, you're going to have to spend the time to go back and do that first. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of time reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. Don't want to do that.
No.
Pretty good, right? Let's leave it as it is.
Well, and people don't want to come and talk to you. If they're, you know, in the design team, they're like, right, we've got design standards of this, it goes in there. If they're in the project team, they already know what they're doing. Then you come to talk to you if there's something by exception, and why not? Yeah.
Claire, listen, thank you so much for sharing all of your insight and your experience with us today. I think it's wonderful, your ability to connect that customer ambition with that sort of, you know, commercial clarity, especially in such a, you know, a complex, you know, capital intensive environment that airports are. Is really, really powerful. And it's really clear through what you've been saying that building the business case for customer experience isn't about asking for faith. It's about showing courage, rigor, you know, strategic vision, and kind of taking a team with you to make that happen. So thank you for that, and thank you as well for everybody who's listening. I hope you found today's episode useful, inspiring, thought-provoking. So please follow and subscribe to CXD and share with others who are working to reimagine what great customer experiences can look like for their organizations. So Claire, thank you again. I hope you'll come back sometime.
Of course, we can come as a group with all the people that we mutually know that we found out.
We'll do that. Okay, guys. Until next time, thanks for joining CSD. All the best.